Hello everybody and welcome back, where today we're going to be talking about Hitman World of Assassination on PSVR2. This game comes out in a little over a week, and today we're going to be talking about all the details we know about the game so far, the recent interview that's happened about the game, and when we might hear about the first reactions that happened down at the studio a little while ago. Before we get into it, only 25% of you are subscribed, so please feel free to do so, and thank you to our patrons and members for keeping the channel going day after day and week after week. With that being said, let's take a look. First off, the question I hear the most from you guys is, what Hitman do I really want to be buying? The answer is Hitman World of Assassination. This used to be called Hitman 3, but it got rebranded a little while ago, and it includes story content from the first, second, and third game. On the PS Store, you'll be looking for that one, but don't bother with the deluxe edition. It seems that the mini story campaigns outside of the main mode are not playable in the upcoming VR version of the game. You can't play any of the DLC that is released for the Hitman trilogy in VR, same way that you can't play any of the DLC for Resi 8 or Resi 4 like Mercenaries or Rose. It's just the main story here. However, that's still going to give you a lot of content. On the technical side of things, Hitman seems to be using dynamic foveated rendering. From the last trailer, you can see some clear DFR as the edges of the environment are very jagged and blurry, whereas the center, or wherever the eyes are looking, is crystal clear. This is a very good thing considering the amount of power that Hitman needs to run in VR, so DFR will definitely help it in that regard. And even though we haven't got confirmation yet, I would say the game is going to hit 60 reprojected to 120. Even on the Pro, I don't think we're going to hit 90 Hz on reprojected for Hitman. Speaking of that performance, we can see in the trailer a couple of other details. All of the maps seem to have dynamic shadows for objects and NPCs, making the world feel a lot more alive and real, and it's this sort of thing that makes PSVR 2 set itself apart from standalone titles. Being able to render things like this make you feel more immersed in the world, and I'm glad that they're here. The last statement we got claimed that all the haptics and adaptive triggers would bring you into the world of Hitman, so I'm assuming we'll have adaptive triggers for guns, haptics in the head for taking damage, and haptics in the controllers for interacting with different items in the world and delivering knockout blows to enemies. A couple of other features as well is full ambidexterity. This is a big selling point of World of Assassination. You're going to be doing everything with gestures and interactions instead of just simple button presses, like the last Hitman port that we've seen, and it seems that this one is going to be the real deal. Third time's the charm, am I right? We've even got some immersive features such as picture-in-picture scopes, as seen in other games like Pavlov, making their way over to Hitman. As in the open wheel racing mission, you can see the sniper rifle has that lovely picture-in-picture. Again, that's something that takes an extra hit to performance to actually pull off, but if they're hitting 60 reprojected to 120, then I'm sure it'll be fine. Before we tackle the new interview that just came out, let's first talk about the first impressions from creators, because last week, a couple of creators got flown out to Denmark to try out the game, and I think there might have been an event in Spain as well for some other creators too, essentially to get hands-on for the first time. This on its own, I think, is a pretty good sign. When companies fly out creators to try out their game, they're usually pretty confident in it. For Behemoth, the team were very confident and passionate for the game, and it turned out really, really well. And despite there being issues to switch back VR at launch, namely on the visual side of things, the gameplay was very solid, and I still held it in high regard when it came out, and that also got a pre-release press session for people to come and try. So I'd say that it's a good thing that people are getting hands-on early. As for when we might find out their impressions, I would say honestly today might be a good bet. It's usually Tuesday or Thursday for things like this. So it might be that this video has actually gone out after people have posted their impressions about the vertical slice that they've played. If it hasn't been today, I would say again, maybe Thursday. And depending on if keys are going out or not before launch, maybe they'll hold off a little bit longer for these first impressions so they can get an embargo closer to the release date. As for codes going out on launch, the only indication that we've got for creators like myself or other people, for me it's going to be a bit too late because I am leaving for Japan in 2 days, so that's not happening. But the only information we've got for other creators for getting hands-on before the game comes out is that it might not happen, as if you look at the Keymailer website for Hitman, the release date on Keymailer for keys going out is March 27th, which is the release date for the game. This would make sense since it's an add-on for World of Assassination and not a standalone game, although some DLCs have been pushed in the past, such as Walkabout Minigolf, to creators before launch, so who knows. Either way, going off the only information that we have on Keymailer, which may be a placeholder, it seems at the moment at least, it might be launch day where people are getting keys to review. Lastly, the World of Assassination PSVR 2 interview went out the other day on March 17th and reads as follows. Agent 47 is about to become much more dangerous. With Hitman World of Assassination lining up its PSVR 2 shot on March 27th, senior game designer Eskil Moll and lead and senior technical designer Toke Kleinert, apologise if I mispronounced that, understood the assignment and delivered some essential intel on the game. They describe an incredible amount of new interactions, such as getting a safe combination and reading it in your hand, and the tactile sensation of actually looking at a note like that feels amazing. Every little set piece in the game before was a button press, and now you actually reach out and touch stuff. We were initially afraid that they wouldn't hold up visually and audibly, so we were nicely surprised. Another one is that you can look away from flashbang grenades, a little bit like Firewall Ultra. There are so many ways of playing the game, and I think it just gets better in VR. It opens up that toolbox even more. The other day, Tokay had one thing in his left hand and another in his right, and he threw them up and caught them. And he suggested he'd tried juggling 3 things. He was like, technically it's possible, right? This kind of does confuse me a little bit, not in a bad way, but this is the sort of kind of reaction to VR that I would get back in like 2016 when I tried the PSVR 1 for the first time, and I'd be blown away by the amount of objects I can hold in Job Simulator and throw around. Again, it's not a bad thing, it's just these seem to be fairly new to VR. I don't know their pedigree, but they seem to be getting kind of like blown away by the interactions in the game. But I guess that would make sense since the game is being converted from flat, and these things are never possible before in Hitman, but I just thought that was a bit of a funny observation. I guess it also makes sense because they're trying to market this to a flat screen audience who's never really played VR before. If you're a Hitman fan and not a PSVR2 fan, you want to know what the difference is, and little interactions like this do make sense to kind of focus on to emphasize that. They describe how combat actually feels a bit easier in VR, as before on the flat, if you got into combat it was kind of a fail state because you died quite easily, but now it's a lot of fun. We also have an item and weapon wheel in VR instead of pausing the game, which is a lot more immersive, and we've got manual reloads, and holsters feel guns on your back. One thing that might put off a couple of people is that we have Resi 4 style third person segments. For example, there's a scene where you're stirring soup, and apparently that was just a bit disorienting in first person, so they have brought it out to a third person POV. We do seem to be getting like the Resi 4, Resi 8 approach, where there are a lot of objects you can interact with in the world, but not everything is able to be picked up. Again, they reiterate interactions like actually physically turning a key into a door and opening it, and describe that moment where they felt it really clicked as a VR game. Lastly, they talk about their favourite levels, and talk about how the train level of the game, which is one of the fans' least favourite from what they say, has actually turned into one of their favourite in VR, because this train level that's a bit more actiony than stealth, which is very unlike Hitman, becomes a really fun shooter level when you put on the headset, because you actually feel like you're in it. Overall, this interview was a bit more focused on the game side of things rather than technical specifications like refresh rate, like resolution targets, which I think I would have preferred, but hopefully it won't be too long till we get that information from creators who've tried it. Just to reiterate as well, this comes out on the 27th of March. Unsure whether it's a midnight release or will be like a 4 PM release like some games sometimes are, but it will cost you a $10 upgrade fee. I think it's a little bit less in the UK just because of exchange rates, but that's it if you already own the game. Well, that's everything that we know about Hitman World of Assassination on PSVR 2. From the technical specs that we do know, to certain gameplay elements and content that you're able to play and not play, let me know what you're most excited for in this game. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.